Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. Let's talk about elevator action on the NES. So imagine that you're a spy, and you have to infiltrate an office building, steal some information, and then escape. Doesn't matter what the information is, you just need to find it, take it, and escape from the building. To do this, you have to use the elevators and escalators. Sounds simple enough, but there will also be an unlimited number of bad guys trying to stop you. Not only that, but you have to deal with your insatiable desire to get yourself killed. You're not the best spy in the world. If you were, then your employer would probably send you on some important mission instead of whatever it is you're doing here. This is basically what happens in Elevator Action. It's a simple arcade game made by Taito and ported to the NES. It's fun, but like other arcade games, it gets repetitive quite quickly. There really isn't too much to the gameplay here. It's a simple arcade game that is designed to get your quarters. You're playing for a high score and bragging rights over your friends, or you're trying to convince your friends to play this game so that you can have bragging rights over them in a random video game that most likely they're not all that interested in. You have two attacks in Elevator Action, a gun, which is the weapon I used the most, and a flying jump kick butt smash thing that seemed like more of an annoyance than anything. It gives you the illusion that you can jump over certain obstacles, when in reality you're just going to plummet to your death because, again, you're not a very good special agent and they sent you on this mission because they most likely don't care about you. Also, it isn't like you get punished for, not being stealthy in this game, so just shoot all the bad guys. There's no reason to do your weird butt stomp thing unless you have some strange Mario fetish, which is possible. One cool thing is you can actually duck and shoot, and I know that sounds a little weird that I'm pointing this out, but it's one of those simple things that you don't realize how important it is until you can't do it in one of these games. The enemies do shoot back at you. They aren't just staring at your character, so yeah, you do have to avoid some of their shots at times, and ducking helps an awful lot. Basically, you can ride the elevator instead of jumping or climbing from the different levels, so that's kind of cool. And in some ways, you can control the elevator in this game, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's almost like you're just constantly pressing the down button so that you don't have to fight all the enemies that are coming after you. You can also crush your enemies underneath the elevator, but watch out because you can do the same thing. You can, if you aren't paying attention, die because of that. You're only given 3 lives in this, but you can get more by increasing your score. This is pretty standard for an arcade game, and console ports like to keep this in. The only issue I have with it is a lack of continues. It's not a big deal in the arcade, where you just keep pumping in quarters and you can continue your game. In the home console game, you can't do that, so yeah, it would have been nice if they had thrown that option in here. It's one of those things that you don't realize how annoying it is until you get pretty far in the game and then die on your last life, and that's just kind of the end of it. It's just a pet peeve of mine, really. I would prefer it if, they let you keep playing the game or something like that, but instead they don't. Whatever. It's a standard problem for a lot of arcade games. It wasn't a big deal back then, but it is kind of annoying now. Overall, it's a decent arcade game. It gets repetitive after a few levels, but you should kind of expect that with an arcade game from the 80s. The controls on the NES are pretty good. It does get a little weird when you're trying to pick stuff up when you find one of the red doors that has the mystical information that you need. But for the most part, you can get in there quite easily and get your stuff. It does get a little annoying. I know I've said that, but it is just a little annoying when you're trying to get on that perfect pixel just to get what you need. All you're really trying to do is just get to the bottom of this building and hop in your somewhat disappointing looking car and then drive away. I have heard some people complain about that since you're trying to be a spy, but to those people I would say, you're not supposed to be in a fancy car as a spy. You're trying to be stealthy, even though our wonderful character is not stealthy at all. But you don't want a big flashy car. You want a cheap car that's going to blend in. I mean, seriously, just think about it a little bit. Elevator Action is just kind of an average-looking NES game. It isn't going to blow anyone away, and it isn't one of the later NES releases that look really good for their time. It just looks okay. The levels look pretty similar aside from a color change or the lights being switched off every once in a while. I don't really have a problem with this. Again, it was pretty standard to do something like this at the time, so yeah, it's not that big of a deal. If you're paying attention, you can pretty easily see the enemies coming. I mean, they open a door, walk out, and then point their gun at you and stare for about a half a second before they try to shoot. Most of the time you can avoid the bullets. Every once in a while, it's a little hard to, but that just adds to the challenge of the game. Really, the jump, kick, butt stomp animation is the only thing that confuses me about this game. It looks weird. It doesn't look normal, and I'm not entirely sure what your guy is trying to do, but it just looks like you use both of your legs to kick your enemy, and then you just sort of land on them, so I'm guessing it's a very elaborate face stomp type thing, where you just land on your enemy's face and crush them. I'm probably thinking way too much about this for a game like this. Overall, I would say the graphics are pretty much middle of the road for an NES game. It isn't as colorful as the Nintendo-made games, and it isn't as bad as some of the, other licensed games or other games that were ported over. It's just okay. It has several visual cues to let you know when enemies are showing up, and the bullets are pretty easy to see. There are a few cheap deaths in the game, but not really because of the visuals. Elevator Action is just kind of an average game on the NES. It is a well-made port of an arcade game, but it isn't really anything special. It's got good controls, decent graphics, and it is a pick-up-and-play game. The only problems are that it's repetitive and it doesn't have any continues, which is really more of an annoyance now than it would have been back in the 90s when you got this on the NES, or the late 80s, I should say. There really isn't too much to complain about in Elevator Action. You don't have some elaborate story, the controls are okay, and everything looks alright with it. It has kind of a fun premise. Being a secret agent trying to steal secrets from the bad guys is a good idea for a video game. It is a little strange for an arcade game, but Taito made a lot of strange arcade games that seem to work pretty well. Strangely, Taito picked this last moment to make something kind of realistic, talking about the not having a flashy car. I really kind of like that part because you're a spy, you're trying to get away and blend in. You're not trying to, have this big flashy thing. I mean, even look at your character. He's not wearing a suit or anything like that. He's just trying to blend in with like an office worker or something like that. Even though he's running around killing everybody, but, whatever. And, why waste a ton of money on a mission like this when it was better suited to just hiring a janitor that worked in the building? Realism aside, I kind of like this game. It isn't one of my favorite arcade games on the NES, but it's a fun one. The NES port is pretty good, but it's just kind of an average game on the system. Anyway, I will talk to you all later. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and see you later, everybody. Bye.